The last transmission captain, Marcus Kane, pressed his palm against the cracked viewport of Firebase Delta 7, watching the crimson storm clouds roil across the desolate landscape of Kepler 442c. The Zyre had been hammering their positions for 3 weeks straight, their biomechanical monstrosities, turning the once verdant colony world into a nightmare of twisted metal and mutated flesh. "Signals coming through, Captain," reported Sergeant Torres from the communications array, her voice tight with exhaustion. The veteran soldier had been pushing herself beyond human limits, coordinating what remained of the scattered human forces. Across the Orion sector. Kane turned from the window, his weathered face bearing the scars of countless engagements. At 42, he'd seen enough war to know when humanity was on the brink. The intercepted Zyre transmissions painted a grim picture. Their commanders spoke of humans as fragile meat sacks, creatures too weak to comprehend true warfare. "Patch it through," Kane ordered, settling into his command chair. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the grotesque visage of a Zyre war leader. Its chitinous skull gleamed with embedded circuitry, and its voice carried the mechanical undertone of their hive mind network. "Human vermin," the alien sneered, its mandibles clicking with disdain. "Your pathetic resistance ends today. We have analyzed your defeat patterns. You lack the evolutionary adaptations for true conflict. Your kind will serve as excellent raw material for our bioforges." Kane's jaw tightened as the transmission continued, displaying tactical readouts of human losses across 12 star systems. Colony after colony had fallen, their populations either dead or worse transformed into Zyre bioweapons through horrific augmentation procedures. Lieutenant Jackson Blake, the base's chief engineer, stepped forward. "Sir, we're down to our last power cells. The quantum generators are failing, and our defensive grid won't hold another coordinated assault." Kane nodded grimly. Blake was barely 25, fresh from the academy before the war began, but he'd proven invaluable in keeping their jury-rigged systems operational. The young officer's innovative modifications had extended their survival by weeks. "What about Kowalski's drone project?" Kane asked, referring to their communications specialist, who'd been working around the clock on something he called Project Disconnect. Torres looked up from her console. "Corporal Victor Kowalski says he needs 12 hours and a miracle. The quantum entanglement disruptors might work, but he needs specialized power cells from the abandoned research station in Sector 7. Kane felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. Sector 7 was crawling with Zyre patrols, and they're infected. Human converts. It would be a suicide mission through territory where the very air pulsed with alien biorhythms. "Get me Kowalski," Kane ordered, "and prepare a volunteer team for deep reconnaissance. If his theory's correct about disrupting their hive mind, we might have one last card to play." Outside, the Zyre war machines began their final approach. Their bioluminescent weapons, charging for what they believed would be humanity's last stand. Into the infected zone, Corporal Victor Kowalski adjusted his makeshift scanner as he led the 3-person team through the twisted remains of Research Station Echo. The Ukrainian-born communications expert had volunteered for the mission himself, knowing that his technical expertise would be crucial for identifying the correct power cells among the station's scattered remains. Behind him, Private Chun moved with the fluid grace of a born survivor, her rifle sweeping the darkened corridors. With practiced precision, the former Hong Kong police sniper had joined the Colonial Defense Force just months before the Zyre invasion, but she'd adapted to asymmetric warfare with deadly efficiency. Dr. Amanda Foster brought up the rear, her medical scanner detecting the subtle biorhythmic disturbances that indicated Zyre presence. The Scottish xenobiologist had become their leading expert on alien contamination patterns, HER research proving invaluable in identifying safe passage routes through infected territory. Readings are spiking, Foster whispered into her comm unit, her Highland accent barely audible. The biomechanical contamination is off the charts. Whatever the Zyre did here, it's still spreading. Kowalski paused at a junction, consulting his jury-rigged navigation system. The corridors were barely recognizable, their surfaces pulsing with organic growths that seemed to respond to their presence. Veins of alien neural tissue snaked along the walls, occasionally flashing with bioluminescent signals. The quantum lab should be 50 meters ahead, he reported, his Polish accent thickening under stress. If my calculations are correct, the specialized fusion cells should still be intact in their shielded storage units. Chun Wu raised her fist suddenly, bringing the team to an immediate halt. Through her scope, she detected movement in the shadows ahead, humanoid forms that moved with the jerky, unnatural gait of Zyre converts. 3 contacts, she breathed. Former colonists, by their clothing. Heavy biomechanical augmentation. Foster's scanner confirmed the worst fears. Neural activity shows complete hive mind integration. They're essentially remote-controlled by the Zyre network now. Kowalski felt his stomach clench as he recognized one of the converts, Dr. Patricia Valdez, who'd been his colleague in the communications division. Her skull had been opened and filled with writhing alien circuitry, her eyes replaced with multifaceted sensors that tracked their movement with inhuman precision. "We can't save him," Chen Wu stated flatly, her finger tightening on her rifle's trigger. "But we can end their suffering." The converted humans suddenly jerked into motion, their modified limbs extending razor-sharp appendages as they charged. Down the corridor, Chun Wu's rifle barked 3 times in rapid succession, each shot precisely placed to sever the neural control stems at the base of their skulls. "Clear," she reported as the converts collapsed, their augmented systems sparking and twitching. Kowalski forced himself to look away from Valdez's lifeless form as they reached the quantum lab. Inside, the fusion cells glowed with contained energy, their quantum matrices still stable despite the station's contamination. "Got them," he announced, carefully extracting 12 cells from their housing. "Let's get back to base before." The lights suddenly cut out, plunging them into absolute darkness. In the distance, they could hear the distinctive chittering of approaching Zyre bioforms. The desperate gambit back at Firebase Delta 7, Captain Kane watched the tactical display with growing dread. Kowalski's team had been silent for 23 minutes, and long-range sensors showed massive Zyre formations converging on their position. The alien biotitans loomed like mechanical mountains, their weapons charging for a final devastating barrage. "Sir, incoming transmission from the field team," Torres announced, relief evident in her voice. Kowalski's static-filled voice crackled through the speakers. "Firebase Delta 7, we have the packages. Requesting immediate extraction at landing. Zone Bravo." Kane felt a spark of hope. "Torres, coordinate with Blake on the pickup. I want those power cells installed and operational within the hour." Lieutenant Blake was already moving, his engineering team prepping the quantum entanglement disruptors that Kowalski had designed. The theory was sound but untested. If they could broadcast a quantum interference pulse directly into the Zyre hive mind network, it might disrupt their coordination long enough for the remaining human forces to mount a counterattack. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the base's chief scientist, monitored the installation process with growing excitement. The Mexican quantum physicist had been skeptical of Kowalski's unorthodox approach, but the mathematical models were surprisingly elegant. "The quantum matrices are synchronizing perfectly," she reported. "If this works, we'll create a feedback loop in their neural network that could cascade across their entire command structure." Kane nodded grimly. It was their last desperate gambit, a technological Hail Mary that would either save humanity or ensure their complete annihilation. The Zir had never encountered quantum-based disruption of their hive mind before, making it impossible to predict the full consequences. "All units, prepare for Operation Disconnect," Kane announced over the base-wide communication system. "This is our moment. Everything we've fought for comes down to the next 10 minutes." The extraction team returned with Kowalski's group, just as Blake finished the final calibrations. The communications specialist immediately dove into the technical preparations, his fingers flying over the quantum interface controls. "Initiating pulse sequence," Kowalski announced. "Broadcasting on all Zir neural frequencies in 3.2. The quantum disruptors hummed to life, sending invisible waves of interference directly into the alien hive mind network. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the tactical display showed something unprecedented. The Zir formation suddenly broke apart, their biotitans stumbling and collapsing as their pilots lost neural synchronization. "It's working," Torres breathed in amazement. "Their entire command structure is fragmenting." But their celebration was short-lived. Dr. Vasquez's sensors detected massive energy spikes throughout the Zir bio-network. The quantum pulse wasn't just disrupting their coordination. It was causing catastrophic mutations in their biological components. "Kane, we have a problem," Vasquez announced urgently. "The quantum interference is destabilizing their bio-augmentations. Their soldiers are mutating uncontrollably, and the process is accelerating." Through the viewport, they could see Zir bioforms writhing and transforming into grotesque, mindless creatures. The once coordinated alien army was becoming a chaotic horde of mutated monsters, equally dangerous to both human and Zir forces. Kane realized with growing horror that they'd unleashed something far worse than the original threat, the desperate. Alliance 3 hours after Operation Disconnect, Firebase Delta 7 received an unprecedented transmission. The quantum static cleared to reveal a Zir commander unlike any they'd encountered before. Its bio-augmentations were failing, circuitry sparking as organic tissue rejected mechanical implants. "Human vessel," the alien spoke haltingly, its usual mechanical undertone replaced by something almost resembling desperation. "I am War Prime Zethrak of the 17th Bio-Legion. We request immediate parley." Captain Kane exchanged glances with his senior staff. Dr. Vasquez's readings confirmed that the quantum pulse had affected every Zir unit within a 50 light-year radius. Their once perfect biomechanical integration was breaking down at the cellular level. "This is Captain Marcus Kane, commanding officer of Firebase Delta 7. State your intentions, War Prime." Zethrak's image flickered as his transmission equipment struggled to maintain coherence. "Our bio-networks are collapsing. The quantum disruption you created has initiated cascade failures throughout our augmentation matrices. Our soldiers are becoming mindless abominations." Lieutenant Blake stepped forward, his engineering scanner detecting massive power fluctuations in the alien transmission. "Sir, their entire technological infrastructure is destabilizing. Without their biomechanical symbiosis, their society will collapse within days." Through the viewport, they could see the results of their desperate gambit. Former Zir bio-titans wandered aimlessly across the battlefield, their pilots trapped inside mutating cockpits. The once terrifying war machines had become prison tombs. For their operators, "What do you want from us?" Kane asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Survival," Zethrak replied simply. "Your species possesses quantum manipulation capabilities we never anticipated. You must help us reverse the cascade, or both our civilizations will be consumed by the chaos we have unleashed." Dr. Foster, who had been monitoring xenobiological readings, spoke up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting massive spore releases from the mutated bioforms. If this contamination spreads unchecked, It could sterilize entire star systems. Kane felt the weight of an impossible decision settling on his shoulders. The Zyre had spent months systematically exterminating human colonies, turning their people into weapons. But now, faced with mutual annihilation, old enemies had become unlikely allies in survival. Sergeant Torres received another transmission on an emergency frequency. "Sir, it's from Admiral Catherine Morrison aboard the UES Defiance. She's requesting immediate tactical assessment." The hologram shifted to reveal humanity's most decorated naval commander, her silver hair reflecting the bridge lights behind her. "Captain Kane, we're receiving surrender requests from Zyre fleets across 7 sectors. They're abandoning their bioships before the mutation spread." Kane processed this information rapidly. If the Zyre were abandoning their primary advantages, their biomechanical integration and hive mind coordination, they were essentially defenseless against human quantum-based weapons. "Admiral, recommend we establish quarantine protocols immediately. The contamination risk is too great to ignore." War Prime Zethrak's image returned, his form visibly deteriorating as they watched. "Time grows short, humans. My remaining commanders are prepared to share our biotechnological knowledge in exchange for assistance in reversing the quantum cascade." Kane looked at his teen Torres with her tactical expertise, Blake with his engineering brilliance, Vasquez with her quantum physics knowledge, Foster with her xenobiological insights. Each faced the same moral dilemma. "Patch me through to all Zyre commanders in this sector," Kane ordered finally. "We'll negotiate terms for a temporary ceasefire while we address the contamination crisis." The reluctant dawn 6 months later, Captain Kane stood in what had once been the Firebase Delta 7 Command Center, now expanded into a joint human-Zyre research facility. The irony wasn't lost on him, a species that had nearly exterminated. Humanity now worked alongside their former enemies in desperate partnership. Dr. Vasquez approached with the latest quantum stability reports, her expression cautiously optimistic. "The biomechanical integration process is stabilizing. We've managed to reverse the cascade in 70% of the affected Zyre population." Through the reinforced windows, Kane could see the strange sight of human and Zyre engineers working side by side, their combined expertise creating technologies neither species could have achieved alone. War Prime Zethrak, his augmentations now carefully balanced between organic and mechanical components, coordinated with Lieutenant Blake on the latest containment protocols. Corporal Kowalski entered the command center. His latest communication, a ray humming with quantum-encrypted transmissions. The Polish technician had become something of a celebrity among both species, his quantum disruption theory having evolved into the foundation for the new alliance's defensive systems. "Captain, we're receiving requests from 37 more Zyre biofleets," Kowalski reported. "They want to join the stabilization program." Kane nodded wearily. Each day brought new groups of former enemies seeking help, their biomechanical systems failing without constant quantum maintenance. The humans had gone from nearly extinct to holding the key to Zyre survival, a position that carried both tremendous power and crushing responsibility. Dr. Foster approached with her latest xenobiological assessment. "The contamination zones are finally shrinking. With Zyre biotechnology and human quantum manipulation working together, we're actually healing the damaged ecosystems faster than anyone projected." Sergeant Torres looked up from her tactical display, which now showed a very different picture than 6 months ago. Instead of red threat indicators, the screen displayed green cooperation zones spreading across multiple star systems. "Sir Admiral, Morrison is requesting a status update for the Colonial Council. They want to know if the Alliance framework is sustainable long-term." Kane considered the question carefully. The Zyre had proven surprisingly adaptable once their hive mind network was replaced with more individualistic quantum-assisted communication systems. Their biotechnological knowledge, combined with human innovation, had created possibilities neither species had imagined. War Prime Zethrock entered the command center, his movements now fluid rather than the jerky mechanical precision of his species' original augmentations. Captain Kane, my remaining war leaders have voted unanimously. We formally request integration into your Colonial Defense Alliance. The moment carried profound historical weight. 6 months ago, these same war leaders had been confident of humanity's inevitable extinction. Now they stood as supplicants. Their survival depended on the very species they'd underestimated. The decision isn't mine alone to make, Kane replied diplomatically. But I'll recommend to the Colonial Council that we accept your request, contingent on continued cooperation. And bioweapons restrictions. Zethrak's head tilted in what Kane had learned was the Zyre equivalent of a nod. Understood. We have learned much about human resilience. Your species survived because you adapt, not because you dominate. Kane looked around the integrated command center, watching humans and Zyre working together on technologies that might reshape galactic civilization. The war-ravaged frontier of the Orion sector was becoming something unprecedented, a proving ground for interspecies cooperation. They thought we couldn't survive battle, Kane murmured, echoing the words that had become an unofficial motto. For the Alliance. Now they're learning to fight alongside us instead. Outside, the twin suns of Kepler 442c cast their light over a world slowly healing from the scars of war, tended by former enemies who had discovered that survival sometimes required the courage to trust.